Let's bring into the conversation Washington Post national investigative reporter Carol Leonnig and former CIA officer Mark Polymeropoulos. He's also an NBC News security and intelligence analyst. And Carol, I want to start with you just because I feel like the malpractice here on the Biden documents is actually in the messaging, because the cases between Biden and Trump Mar-a-Lago are very different. But why the gaps in transparency? Why the messaging at all to the American people when this started? Were there opportunities along the way to share with the American people what was going on? What prevented them and why?
Mika, it's such an important point because in the Biden White House and even among Biden's personal lawyers, there is no concern that the president of the United States has any criminal or legal liability here. No concern. Now, we don't know all the facts, and we've got to be careful about that. But that's what I'm hearing from sources. There is a concern, however, with how this is dripping out of the White House and makes the Biden White House look like it's hiding something because did not share the November discovery, did not reveal the December discovery. In fact, this idea that the Biden White House disclosed these additional, the why. The why is because the Justice Department was conducting an investigation to quickly review, essentially, what's the totality of the records and how are they mishandled or handled? How did they get to Biden's home and to his office at the Penn Biden Center? And the White House folks and his personal lawyers, I'm told, believed that it was best to let the Department of Justice do its work quickly, expeditiously, and without any interruption or sharing of details of the probe with the public. There's one big problem there, Mika. This isn't just any old person with classified records in their garage. It's the president of the United States. And so the idea of letting the Department of Justice do its work quietly doesn't work because, as you know, reporters have one by one been disclosing, revealing, uncovering these facts. And it's going to keep happening. The White House, I think, is starting to get its arms around the idea that it has to tell its story itself, as it began to do on Saturday.
Yes, but I'm not sure I heard what you just said, which was, listen, the Department of Justice, we immediately turned what we had over at the National Archives. We immediately self-reported, and the Department of Justice and lawyers wanted to do a broad sweep of everything, make sure we've gotten every document, do a clean sweep to get a real handle on what the situation is, and then move from there. And that's why there is the gap. They wanted to really get a sense of what the entire situation was so they could fully report this to the American people. I haven't heard that.
And
have you?
Yes. And they also, I have to say, they also were afraid of, I've told by sources, they were afraid about the idea that they might be tampering with the investigation. And tampering is a very big word, right? But they were afraid they would be interfering with it. Because if they start saying, so-and-so found these records, they found X number of records, the fear inside the White House was, okay, well, the Department of Justice doesn't want us sharing the details of potential witnesses. And we don't know the full account because we didn't look at every record. So we can't say there are 7 that were classified as secret and 2 that were classified as top secret. And again, as a comparison, Mika, I would just say, you know, this is not good for the Biden White House because it would have been better for them politically and optics wise for them to share the full account. But let's compare once again to the Trump administration. When Trump was no longer president, he fought for months to avoid turning over the records. He had a lawyer, he urged a lawyer to say that they turned over everything when he knew they had not. And then his lawyer did assert that they had turned over everything when they had not. There were still many, many more classified records in his possession. None of that was disclosed to the press until various reporters were able to figure out what exactly was going on at Mar-a-Lago. And later, more records were searched for at other locations. So it's really apples and bananas, to use another person's description. But this is not good for the Biden White House because he's the president. He has to be able to give a full accounting of what happened. And right now, his team feels he can only give a partial account.
Washington Post national investigative reporter Carol Leonnig, thank you. And I again just see a way forward here where you say we are following the Department of Justice advice and their investigation. They fully want to look into this, and they don't want people scrambling all over Biden's documents. They want to take a look at this and find every single document and see the extent of the problem here. We're self-reporting, we're cooperating, and yes, we held off from saying anything because the Department of Justice asked us to temporarily so they could get a handle on the situation. We were cooperating with the law. That would have been something. But, Mark, you have a better solution for this, and I like it a lot. It's entitled, Dear Politicians, Stop Misplacing Classified Material. And you write in part, quote, those of us who were vocal about former President Donald Trump's hoarding of classified documents at Mar-a-Lago cannot shrink from our responsibility to speak out now that President Biden is embroiled in a related scandal. The appointment of a special prosecutor by Attorney General Merrick Garland is important. We need to ensure total fairness and objectivity from the Department of Justice when it comes to investigating the mishandling of classified information, which is just flat out wrong. Whoever does it, whether inadvertent or deliberate, leaving classified documents in unsecured spaces is dangerous. It risks the exposure of sources and methods. An unsecured document that contains information from a human source can get that person killed. It can dissuade others from taking grave risks to share exceptionally valuable information in the future. A clear and robust apolitical message should be sent to the political world. Tighten up, everyone. Lives and America's security are at stake. Couldn't agree more. But I'm curious with you, Mark, if there were the discovery of a document in Joe Biden's garage or in the Penn Biden Center, because of the risk that you just laid out in your article, wouldn't it make sense that the Department of Justice and investigators who have, the ability to access classified documents and touch them, get in there and check everything out before they let the world know? Because you don't want to let the world know and have any documents that may be out there get in inappropriate hands. What am I missing here?
No, Mika, I think you're entirely right. But as you just noted before, they haven't even said that. And I think when it comes to kind of, a crisis situation like this, there are three things that are really important that not only would help the Biden administration, but also would be the right thing. First is that President Biden has got to come out and own this. There is the buck stops with him. There's accountability here. Mm-hmm. So this idea of the ownership, hey, this is me. Even if it was inadvertent, it's on my watch. I accept responsibility. Yep. The second is to explain what happened. So you own it, then you explain it. And explain it is exactly what you said. Instead of this kind of drip of information, which of course makes the administration look like they're hiding something, explain exactly what's happening. And the last point is you fix it. And, yesterday, former Deputy Director of the CIA, Mike Morrell, kind of came out with what I thought was a really smart proposal, is to create a bipartisan commission, a task force, to figure out on these presidential transitions on how to get this right. So again, own it, explain it, fix it. That's not only the right thing to do, it's going to help the administration in the long run, because right now it just doesn't look good for them.
Yeah, Joe Biden, John Heilman is very good at owning it and pushing for transparency. I think the explaining is where things got weak, honestly. There was a lot of defensiveness from the White House podium, a lot of pushing back, a lot of hedging. And this is not the kind of situation where you can hedge for a second. You got to know your stuff. You've got to understand it. And quite frankly, it might have been good to bring in someone who understands the handling of classified material and also at what stage in the investigation they were in, so they could be fully transparent about what they know and what they don't know and why they didn't share initially.
Yeah, Mika, it's like I do think you're putting your finger on something important, which is that, Ron Klain, the White House Chief of Staff, is a lawyer and a really smart lawyer, and it seems like in how they've dealt with this, they have handled in terms of ethics, in terms of transparency internally to the Justice Department, in terms of responsiveness, yes, in terms of straightforwardness, on all the legal fronts. they have handled this extraordinarily well. When it's the public-facing parts of this, the communications parts of it, and often we talk in our business all the time, we say that something's a communications problem. Often it's not a communications problem, it's a policy problem. In this case, it seems like the Biden administration, to the extent that we know, has been handling this by the book legally, but it's done a very poor job up to now in communicating with the American people. And given, the politics surrounding this, because of the Trump parallels, even if they're, as we've said now a million times, totally dissimilar in almost every important way. The fact is, they're still classified. It's a classified documents. We now both have two classified documents, a former president, sitting president, both having independent counsels looking at them. Those parallels are things that present serious political challenges, and to address serious political challenges and to minimize them, a very strong, transparent, clear, forthcoming communication strategy is required, and I have a lot of sympathy for someone like Karine Jean-Pierre who's out there every time a White House spokesman has to talk about things related to special counsels. Historically, it's always a problem because they don't know as much as they should know, et cetera, et cetera. I really do agree with you 1,000% that this is a thing. They've not handled it well in terms of communications going so far. They must start to handle it better going forward if they're going to minimize the political risks involved and synchronize with how well they're handling it seems so far on the legal side, getting their political and communications house in order in the same way.